Hello, and welcome to the Divorced Dadvocate, divorce support for dads, where we help dads create a healthy and less traumatic divorce. My name is Jude Sandoval, and I'm your host. I created this podcast and the Divorced Advocate community as a result of my own high conflict divorce, and because you as a dad deserve all the resources necessary to thrive through this challenging time. I encourage you to check out our website at thedivorcedadvocate.com, where there are resources that correspond to this episode, as well as free access to our membership community, where you will find live meetings, free workshops and courses, private discussion groups, and more. And now, on to this week's episode. Hello, and welcome to the show. Thank you so much for listening in again this week. We are going to be chatting about setting boundaries as a divorced dad today. And this was a topic that took up most all of our group meeting yesterday, and I feel is a really, really important one, particularly when you are just beginning to or just post-divorce and beginning to define some of those new relationships with your kiddos, with your ex, as you go on and create the life and environment post-divorce. But before we jump into this, let's welcome Dan and Elaine to the Divorced Advocate community. And if you have not checked it out yet, do so at thedivorcedadvocate.com. Get the support that you need. We talk about it all the time. Excuse me. We talk about it all the time. Not self-isolating, going through this difficult and challenging time. That's why we have built this community for you. We've got tons of free resources at the website, as well as paid resources. So check it out. The divorce quiz is a great one. Just take 10 minutes and find out where you're at mentally, emotionally in your divorce compared to others who have gone through it before as well. Excuse me. Wow. And you'll get some immediate results to that to your inbox, have an opportunity for us to sit down and review that. So check it out at thedivorcedadvocate.com. All right. Divorce can feel like navigating uncharted waters. Actually, probably for most of us, it is navigating uncharted waters, because hopefully you haven't done this more than once. And if you have, it's still probably somewhat foreign to you, still uncharted. And especially when you're a father and trying to maintain a healthy relationship with your children while managing interactions with your ex. So setting clear boundaries is essential, not only for your well-being, but also for fostering healthy relationships in general. Boundaries ensure that you remain a consistent and present parent. It helps you to avoid unnecessary conflict and prioritize your self-care, which is critical. So let's explore how, as a divorced dad, we can establish and maintain boundaries with our exes and our children, while also addressing the pitfalls of neglecting this vital practice, because that's just a recipe for disaster. We'll include I'll include some practical examples of how to handle situations when those boundaries are not respected as well. But so it's going to look like I'm going to talk about what it looks like, examples of a violation, and how to handle it. But before we do that, let's talk about why boundaries matter. What boundaries are is they're creating healthy limits that define acceptable behavior in your relationships. And if, let's say, you have not had these, let's say maybe you're been codependent, and codependents are known for not setting healthy boundaries and or setting them and allowing them to be crossed, then this may have been challenging, for you, and maybe a direct result as to why your relationship ended. But you don't want to have that same relational dynamic post-divorce that you had during your marriage. So it's incredibly important to do something about it now. And the boundaries protect your mental and emotional health. They also set clear expectations, and help build mutual respect. So for us, divorced dad, what this can do is it can provide clarity in an otherwise complex dynamic. There's a lot going on, so by being clear with boundaries and holding true to those, and it's impossible, or it's possible to make things much better. Without boundaries, though, it creates misunderstandings, resentment, or overcommitment that can quickly lead to burnout and conflict. So first, let's talk about setting boundaries with your ex, and then we'll talk about setting boundaries with your children. Setting boundaries with your ex. Often we have to engage, obviously, with our exes for the purpose of co-parenting. And these interactions can range from amicable to very highly challenging. So I'm going to give you three ways to set boundaries and examples of how to address the violations. The first boundary that you need to set during your divorce, post-divorce, is establishing a clear way of communication, establishing what those channels will be, establishing clear communication channels, if you will. What does this look like? Decide whether you'll communicate primarily via text, via email, or maybe a co-parenting app. And you might not be the one deciding this. It might be the court that decides it if it's a high conflict divorce. But then stick to the chosen method for routine matters to reduce miscommunication and avoid emotionally charged exchanges. So what does this look like if it's violated? Your ex starts calling or texting you at all hours about non-emergency matters, right? They start blowing up your phone or just sending you a bunch of text messages at inappropriate times, and doesn't stick to if it was communications through, say, the Talking Parents app that they're doing this and it wasn't an emergency. So how would you handle something like this? So you've already set the boundary. You've talked about communicating through, let's say, the parenting app, and this doesn't happen. Politely but firmly restate your boundary. I've mentioned before that I prefer co-parenting matters to be handled through email unless it's an emergency. I'll address your email during my next available time. So that's just a nice, simple, friendly way to address that the behavior that their behavior, and addressing the behavior is the big thing. Just focus on behavior, not intentions. Don't let emotions get into it, anything like this. So it's just addressing the behavior, stating what your boundary is, and then letting them know what you're going to do. That's the most important thing. So, but if the behavior continues, consider using a co-parenting app that tracks all the communications, or maybe do just communications only through the co-parenting app. But again, it's important. Set the boundary in the beginning. Be very clear about the boundary. When the boundary is crossed, then point out what the behavior is and what you have asked for, and then state what you will do. Okay. Another one, number 2, define the scope of interaction. What does this look like? This may look like keeping your conversations focused on the children and avoiding veering into personal topics or past grievances. So don't get into arguments about things in the past, etc. An example of this violation might be, or example of a violation might be, your ex starts venting about your past relationship during drop-offs or in messages, right? So they'll maybe be critical, make comments, etc. And you can handle it by calmly redirecting the conversation by saying, I'm not comfortable discussing personal matters. Let's stay focused on what's best for the children or the child's name. And then if it persists, consider limiting in-person exchanges and relying more on written communication. So, sometimes that's not possible. Sometimes you might just get accosted during an exchange, but you can try to even limit those exchanges by having them happen at daycare or at school where the other parent picks them up. So there are ways to mitigate some of this. We talk about this a lot in group meetings together. Individual coaching, we talk about this too quite a bit in crafting a parenting plan and a divorce agreement that, dependent upon the situation and the environment and a relationship, that is going to be most effective for you to be able, particularly if you found it challenging like I did, to set those boundaries, to be able to create situations that set you up for success and limit maybe some of this stuff of how to communicate or the scope of interactions, et cetera. So it's really, really helpful. And that's another reason why a coach can help you to look at a divorce agreement and give you some consideration. Say, hey, have you thought about this? It's a high conflict divorce. You want less opportunity to have interactions about whatever it might be that will come up. Maybe you should do your transitions like this. So something to think about, something to consider. It will, guaranteed, it's going to save you money, but it could save you also a ton of headache on the back end in having to deal with some of these difficult and challenging situations and issues. Okay, number 3, set firm pickup and drop off boundaries. This is something that we talk about in structuring the parenting agreement. But what does that look like? Stick to the agreed upon schedules for custody exchanges and be punctual and ensure these moments remain drama free. What's a violation? Your ex frequently shows up late or requests last minute changes to the schedule. And so you can handle it like this. Acknowledge the inconvenience. Okay, again, the behavior. This is inconvenience to me. Reaffirm the importance of sticking to the plan. You could say something like, I understand things come up, but these changes disrupt my plans and or the kids' plans or the kids' names or the kids' names routine or the kids' routine. Let's make an effort to stick to the agreed schedule going forward. And if tardiness persists, document incidents and then consider either involving a mediator or a parental decision maker, parental coordinator, or maybe you even have to go back to court to have to deal with this. But that's then how you enforce that boundary if it continues to be passed by and passed through and disregarded. So I'm giving you some easy first ideas of how to handle it. If you're in a high conflict situation and it becomes something, or it probably doesn't just become something, because it's that's probably been the relational dynamic for a long time. But if that relational dynamic does not start to change, then you may have to take what you feel are extreme circumstances that might be going back to court, that might be limiting your communication to very, very specific ways, only that might be having little to no interaction with your ex. So those are really where you have to go to the extreme in order for them to get the message to be respectful of those boundaries. So, and again, that's something that we talk about in group meetings or individual coaching as well, and strategize around that. Okay, that's boundaries with your ex. Just a few ideas, a few examples. Let's talk about setting boundaries with your children. And as much as we love our kiddos, it's crucial to maintain structure and consistency in our relationships with them. So, and this is really, as dads and as men, as fathers, this is a critical thing that we bring to and we provide in are modeling to them as dads. So while divorce can make us want to overcompensate, it's really incredibly important to stick to setting those boundaries, because it teaches them respect, responsibility, and resilience. These are all things that we teach, that we model to our kiddos, that help them learn to be healthy and functioning adults. So while it might be hard, and this came up on our call this weekend too, of how hard that is sometimes, particularly if the environment at the other household is not like that, and it's maybe a 180 difference from what it is that the kiddos are experiencing. That's not a bad thing. You stick to what you know, stick to what you believe, stick to doing what you are to do as a dad, and don't try to capitulate it just to overcompensate or make the kids happy or whatever it might be. Again, one of the things we really talked about was the mindset of what is our ultimate goal, what is our ultimate intention as fathers, and that is to raise healthy and functioning adults, right? We want our kids to grow up. We want them to have healthy relationships. We want them to be functioning adults in our society. So that is ultimately what we want. And sometimes that is going to have times in their childhood where it's bumpy, where our relationships with them are strained, where we're having challenges, where there's arguments, etc. And we have to stick to it. We have to fight through that, because even if they get upset about it, then they do see and they do know and they do understand that you are helping them. They may not, and it may not register with them. It may never register with them, but it will probably register with them sometime when they're an adult, maybe when they have killed children and their parents, and then they see and know and understand that's what you are doing, helping them to learn respect and responsibility and resilience and some of these other things that we bring to the table. So very, very important, gentlemen. And I know it's hard and I know it's exhausting, especially in the midst of this or just post-divorce and trying to sort all of the chaos out. So let's talk about the number one boundary with your kiddos that you can do is be clear about household rules. Establish expectations for behavior, for chores, for screen time. The rules should be consistent, even if your ex has different rules at their home. It is perfectly okay to have different rules at different homes. Now, it's ideal if you guys can communicate and have those rules be the same consistently between both households, but oftentimes in high conflict situations, that's just absolutely impossible. So, so don't worry about it. It's okay. It is okay if it's not happening. And so here's an example of a violation. Your child refuses to do chores, saying, I don't have to do this at mom's house, right? You might get that a lot of times. Mom doesn't have us do this, or mom doesn't say that, or mom says this, or whatever. So you can handle it by gently but firmly explaining the importance of respecting your rules. Something like, I understand things might be different at mom's, but in our home, we all pitch in. Let's do this together today, and I can show you how. Right? So it's okay to say that. It's okay to say, I understand that and I appreciate that, but we're at dad's house now, and this is how we do things at dad's house. That's perfectly fine. That's not bad-mouthing anybody. That's not talking about intentions or bad intentions or maligning anybody. It is simply stating the behaviors that you expect at your house, and we do chores. Or we are respectful, or we say please and thank you, whatever it might be. It is perfectly fine to point out the differences in the environments, the differences in the behaviors or the expectations of the behaviors at your house compared to the other house. Okay, number 2, say no when necessary. No, period. It can be a full sentence. Resist the urge to say yes to every request out of guilt or shame. Saying no teaches kids boundaries and respect. This was very hard for me, having a ton of shame going through divorce and post-divorce, and having all this stuff in my head of having ruined my children's lives, etc. And I was a terrible dad, blah blah blah. Then then that goes to trying to make things easier, which is not necessarily better for them, right? So saying no is okay. Saying no teaches boundaries. Saying no teaches respect. That is okay. So if they violate that, let's say they throw a tantrum or sulk when you refuse to buy them an expensive toy, or expensive toy, or anytime, if they throw a tantrum or sulk or whatever, when you set that boundary, that could be an example of violation. And how you can handle it, again, stay calm and avoid giving in to emotional pressure, right? So here's the other thing too, is kids are very keen, right? And they're not doing this to be manipulative at the conscious level, but they're keen on picking up if you might be feeling guilty, or if you're maybe feeling emotionally drained, right? Because we got so much going on. So they might pick up. So that's why we talk about making sure you're taking care of yourself mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, so that you're strong, so that you're present, also so that you can not give in to emotional pressure from your kiddos. So you can say something like, I know you're disappointed, but this isn't something that we can do right now. Let's talk about something fun we can do together instead. So stand firm, even if the tantrums continue. And again, consistency is key. Stay consistent. You got to stay consistent. If you say no about it one time and then you say yes another time, then that just sends a mixed message. So stay consistent. All right, number 3, don't blur the parent-friend line. And I don't know that this happens as much with dads as I've seen this happen with moms. And that's just an observation. It's not a criticism. But what it looks like is, while it's tempted to be the quote unquote fun parent, remember that your role is to guide, discipline, and nurture. Dads, we are to guide, discipline, and nurture, right? That's helping us to those things that we talked about earlier, learn respect, responsibility, and resilience. That's what those things result in. So what happens? What is an example of a violation? Let's say I've got teenagers. If you got teenagers, you know that the talking is a lot, right? Your teenager speaks disrespectfully to you, treating you more like a peer than a parent, right? Like, I get this bruh thing. If you guys have teens, you know what the bruh thing is, right? So, like, I'm not your bruh. So speak to me respectfully. How do you handle it? Address, again, the behavior directly, but respectfully. Something like, I care about what you're saying, but I won't respond if you speak to me like that. So the bruh does not get an answer in my house. It sometimes does, or it doesn't, or it gets a look usually sometimes. And they already know at this point. But anyway, so I care about what you're saying, but I won't respond if you speak to me like that. And then you got to make sure that you don't respond if they do it in the future, right? Let's try this again when we can both talk respectfully, and then follow through with that consequence if the disrespect continues. If they're not addressing you the appropriate way, then you ignore them. They're not going to go away because they probably want something, especially if they're teens, right? So they're going to eventually address you the way that you are asking them to, and staying true to your boundary if they want something, if they want to get fed or driven somewhere, et cetera, right? So make sure to do that. Don't blur the parent-friend line. Again, we are here. And so this isn't also to say, like, so all of you guys, many of you are in various different stages of child rearing, right? And so some of this stuff is there are places of development, times of development, where you're going to be less parenting and more consulting as a teen, when they start to get older, and in high school, and then start to spread their wings, test test their limits and their boundaries, and learn more about life and have some more freedom and stuff like that. So I'm not, we just want to make sure that we're not trying to be their friend, right? Because our ultimate intention is to help them be healthy, functioning adults. When they're healthy, functioning adults, then we'll be friends with them because they'll be at the same status as we are, right? There will be we'll be their adult parent friends. It will probably be consultants, etc. More than just a friend, obviously, but the relationship kind of changes, it transforms. But right now, as they're still adolescents, we just got to make sure that we're not trying to just be that friend and be that cool parent. Okay, enough on that. Let's talk about common pitfalls of weak boundaries. Failing to set and maintain boundaries can have far-reaching consequences. Here are three of them. Number one is emotional burnout. Constantly accommodating others at the expense of your own well-being leads to stress and resentment. Codependents out there listening, this is what leads to us blowing up or getting upset or getting angry because we have not set those consistent boundaries and held true to them and made sure that people in our relationships in our life have held true to those. And then we get upset and we get emotionally burnt out, and then it leads to a blow up. It leads to us being upset or sad or whatever it might be. Another common pitfall of weak boundaries is inconsistent parenting. Lack of structure will confuse children and lead to behavioral issues, right? If they don't know, if one day they're getting away with something, one day they're not, that is incredibly confusing for the kiddos, even if it's different in different households. And I'm not talking about that if they're getting away at one household and then they come to the other and they're not, and that stays consistent that they're not at the one household, then that is okay. But if they're not at the one household and then they come to the other household, and sometimes they are getting away with it, sometimes they're not. Let's say that they're to your household. That is unbelievably confusing for kiddos. And so create that structure and make sure it's going to help. It's going to help them to grow, and it's going to help mitigate some behavioral issues. The third one is that there's conflict escalation. Without boundaries, interactions with your ex can spiral into unnecessary arguments, and that goes with controlling your environment. Right? I talked about it. I didn't label it that earlier, but controlling your environment, the environment maybe on how you communicate, the environment of how you do your transitions, etc. Control that environment. It will limit the number of conflicts and escalations of issues when you're dealing with your ex. So let's give an example. If you allow your ex to repeatedly disregard custody arrangements without addressing it, resentment can build, and your child may feel caught in the middle. Similarly, if you let children manipulate rules with guilt or tantrums, it can lead to long-term struggles with respect and responsibility. And sometimes that doesn't manifest until they're maybe even a little bit older. So make sure to keep those firm boundaries, because those weak boundaries can, and those are just a few brief examples. So some tips for success in staying firm and holding true to your boundaries. Again, be consistent, whether it's with your ex or your kids. Consistency reinforces those boundaries and builds trust. That's another one that they when they see that you have boundaries, it gives them a sense of security. That sense of security builds trust over time, and then as they grow, that is a huge thing, to have trust in that relationship with you and your kiddos. For when by the time that they become teens is huge, because then that helps to facilitate that spreading of their wings and allowing them to go out and start testing the world on their own, because they have the confidence to do that, but they also feel secure enough with you that you and they trust you, you trust them to go out and to do that. So this all starts early on when you're being consistent when they're 2, 3, 4 years old in how you're parenting them. So be consistent. Another one is communicate assertively. Use I statements. They express your needs without being confrontational. For instance, I need us to stick to the schedule to avoid confusion. Not like you're not sticking to it. You need to da 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 da. I need us. So it's stating what you need, right? Stating what behavior you need to see from them. I need us to stick to the schedule to avoid confusion, right? So that could be with the kids. That could be with your ex. I statements are good in setting boundaries. Another tip is seek support, right? So I talked about our group meetings. We talk about this stuff all the time. We go through scenarios. The format is we do our introductions. We got any new people. We kind of fill people in on where we're at in our divorce and our situation, or post-divorce or pre-divorce, whatever it is. We'll give some updates, and then we will talk about various scenarios, situations. We will share ideas. We will give support. We will talk about a lot of this stuff. So get support, whether it's a divorced dads group, or it's a therapist, or a church group, or a men's group, or something. You need other men, other dads in your life to help navigate these tricky situations. And I got to tell you, I told the guys again this week, so it's been years now that I've been doing this, 5, I think. And every time we have a meeting, I get something out of it, just listening to the guys, going through the scenarios, hearing their ideas, hearing what they've done, seeing how they show up. I mean, it's absolutely, absolutely amazing. So get some support. The last tip for staying firm is practice your self-care. I mentioned it earlier. Remember, you cannot pour from an empty cup. Prioritize the activities that rejuvenate you, that allow you to stay balanced, to stay healthy, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. You can't put that oxygen mask on somebody else until you've put it on yourself. So, hey, this might look like you got to schedule the 15-minute walk or the workouts, however many days a week. You may have to schedule how and when you're going to be able to go to the store to buy healthy foods to make for you and the kiddos. You may have to schedule the time for you to have a social life, to be able to go out and do something maybe once a week, hopefully more than that, right? So you have to prioritize your self-care and make sure to practice it. All right. In conclusion, setting and maintaining boundaries as a divorced dad is not always easy, but it is one of the most important things you can do for yourself and for your kiddos. By establishing clear limits with your ex and your children, you're going to create a healthier, more stable environment where everybody can thrive. When boundaries are tested or crossed, use the strategies to assert them calmly but firmly, right? That's what we want to be. We want to be calm, but we want to be firm. It's about balancing compassion with firmness, and most importantly, staying true to your values. Start small, stay consistent, and remember, boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges to healthier relationships. I'll say that again. Boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges to healthier relationships. Gentlemen, thanks so much for listening in this week. If you found some value in what you heard, please share this far and wide on social media. If you're listening on a platform, video, or podcast, leave us a comment or a star rating. That goes a long way in helping other dads find our podcast and listen in. So thank you. Have a great week, and God bless. To hear the rest of this episode and access the corresponding resources, visit thedivorcedadvocate.com and become a member of our community. It's free to join and will provide you with the resources you deserve as a divorced or divorcing dad. Thank you for listening. God bless, and I'll talk with you next week.